I want to thank our panel, many of whom I've gotten to know well over the years, served with some. And Dr. Gottmiller, nice to see you again after our Aspen meeting. I want to continue this discussion on the China breakout, but I want to ask the question in the context. I've been focusing a lot on the implications of a war in the Taiwan Strait. One thing I think that a lot of people are missing, but I'd like your review on it, or your views on it, is this breakout, I think, is actually very related to Taiwan, meaning if the Chinese are going to look to possibly invade Taiwan at the end of this decade or earlier, they're going to want to have some kind of nuclear deterrent posture with us. So I think it's actually driven by that. But what do you think? And maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Miller, and just go down the line quickly. The breakout hasn't been discussed in the context of an invasion of Taiwan, and I think it's directly related.
I believe it is directly related, but I think that today China already has the capability to destroy our population base, our cities. The question is, where is Chinese strategy going in the future? Are they seeking to have some sort of a counterforce capability in that overall deterrent threat against us intervening in Taiwan? But I think that is the driver. I think you're absolutely correct. And there's a bit of they're needing to have force to deter Russia as well, because there's a rivalry there.
Ambassador?
Senator Sullivan, I agree with you, and this is something that Frank and I addressed in our formal statement submitted to the committee. The attention in the Chinese buildup has gone largely to the strategic and particularly the FOBs, which we had a discussion of earlier, but there's also a buildup of tactical forces opposite Taiwan. And I think we have to pay attention both to the strategic balance, globally, but also the theater balance, in part because I think the Chinese are trying to do what the Soviets did in the Cold War, which is put stress on the reliability of our extended deterrent guarantees and intimidate our allies and intimidate us with essentially an effort to make sure we don't exercise a counter-intervention capability if they try and invade Taiwan.
Let me follow up with a question again for the whole panel, and if the two who didn't get to answer. My first question, want to take it in order, but because it's a follow-up, Ambassador, to your question. I was kind of dismayed to see that President Biden is, like President Obama was at the end of his tenure, is toying with this no first use idea. Biden's nuclear review omits no first use, but it seems like they're still toying with this idea. What do you think that does as it relates to our allies, particularly our allies in Asia, related to your point with regard to not just Taiwan, but an administration that once again is toying with this concept? And can I get each of yours definitive answer? Can just be one sentence on whether you agree with the a no first use doctrine, or you think it would undermine deterrence and our allies? So, Ms. Gottmiller, can I start with you, Dr. Gottmiller?
Yes, certainly, Senator. Good to see you again after our
nice
meeting in Aspen. By the way, I'm not a doctor, so you can just say Ms. Gottmiller or just Rose.
you never go wrong if you call someone doctor or ambassador, I found out in this job. But.
Well, thank you very much. I would just underscore what you had to say about what is evidently in the nuclear posture review of the Biden administration. It hasn't been publicly released yet, but the fact sheet we have out of the DOD clearly does not refer to any kind of no first use policy.
Okay, so you're against that? You would be against that.
What I agree with is the notion that's in that fact sheet that says the possibilities of nuclear use are extremely remote, and I absolutely agree with that. As far as what was put down in the posture review, it looks like it doesn't touch the no first use issue.
Ms. Creedon?
So, Senator, I certainly agree that the conditions are not appropriate for a no first use policy. Ironically, this was something that the Obama administration wrestled with at the end and determined that the conditions weren't there then, and the conditions now are even
It
worse.
just keeps popping up, though, I mean, as you know. Ambassador, Mr. Miller, I just want to, and any other comments on allies, Taiwan, or?
Just a brief one. This is something Frank and I have actually written about in the past. I don't see the value of a no first use pledge. I don't think our adversaries would take it seriously to begin with. I don't think it really buys us anything, but it would be, I think, discomforting to our allies and undermine extended deterrence.
So I used to joke that Woody Hayes said that a forward pass would have 3 things happen, 2 of which were bad. A no first use policy has 4 things that would happen, and they're all bad. 1, our allies would be disheartened because they would believe the nuclear umbrella is shrinking. 2, those allies who are capable of building their own nuclear weapons will take a step closer to building their own nuclear weapons because they won't believe in us. 3, the Russians and Chinese will never believe that we have adopted that policy. And 4, the Russians and Chinese will not change their own first-use policies based on a U.S. no first-use pledge. So I think it's a terrible idea, and I've opposed it all along.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great panel here.